What's going on, y'all? Drixus back again for another deck tech. We are just cranking them out here in the PDH studio. We're super excited about this whole deck tech idea, so we're really just diving into them. And I have yet another top tier, highly competitive deck here with Manic Scribe. Now I'm just kidding, this one sucks too. We got a 0-3 mono blue deck. Yes, this is a mono blue deck. That might not really sound like me, but let me tell you, I have a handful of mono blue decks, and they are probably a couple of the worst mono blue decks you'll ever see in PDH. So don't get too scared. This is still very bad. In fact, it's a mill deck. Yes, mill in PDH. That's right. And no, not a combo mill or anything like that. It's not persistent petitioners. It's just mill. So let's talk about Manic Scribe a little bit here first. Okay, when he comes into play, each opponent mills 3. Okay. Now, if you have Delirium, then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, they have to mill 3 more cards. So Delirium says if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, you have Delirium. So that's important. We have to keep 4 different card types in our graveyard to keep that alive. Now one thing I'll say is that it's sometimes hard for people to remember to mill before they draw. We run into this issue constantly. So I decided, why not have a nice little reminder here? This is me, the Manic Scribe himself, circa 2005. What we do is we pass it around, put it on top of everybody's deck. So at the beginning of their turn, they see this smug little face telling them to mill 3 before they draw. And it works wonders, let me tell you. You will not forget this face once you see it. Oh my God, that is the face of a miller.
Did you mill 3?
You mill 3, you gotta mill 3. So the deck has 2 goals, okay? Goal number 1, get Delirium. Goal number 2, stay alive. This deck has no way to win other than milling everybody out. There's not even like a Ulamog's Crusher, Eldrazi Devastator backup plan, nothing. This is all in, mill. Get Delirium as soon as possible, mill everyone, stay alive. That is it. That's all we're trying to do. So as I'm going through it, you're gonna notice that it's all kind of built around maintaining Delirium. And so one big way I did that was by playing a pretty even number of artifacts, enchantments, sorceries, instants, and creatures. There's at least 10 or 11 of each of them in the deck. There's more instants than anything, but everything is there. So it just makes it easier to keep Delirium and always have Delirium and quickly get it back, because if somebody, maybe uses a Tormod's Crypt on you, you got to get that Delirium back as quickly as possible so you start milling again. So first, I'm going to go through a few cards that are put in here specifically because they help with Delirium so much. So some very straightforward ones here. Tolarian Winds and Flux. These just give you Delirium pretty much. Discard your hand, then draw that many cards. I mean, as I said, the deck is pretty evenly distributed between different card types, so chances are you're going to be discarding 4 different card types, and it's an instant in the grave as you play it as well. So Flux is similar, but it gives everybody the option to mill themselves a little bit, maybe. Each player gets to choose and discard any number of cards from their hand and then draw that many. And then you draw a card to replace the Flux as well. So both of these typically just give me Delirium quite quickly. So very nice. And I also have one tribal card in here. Tribal does count as a card type, so I figured why not play it. And it's also not the worst card. You shrink something, but if you control a wizard, you draw a card. And he happens to be a wizard, so this is a cantrip almost always, and 2 card types in your grave for 1, which when you can get 2 for 1, that's always nice. And then we have 2 ramp creatures that also just happen to help with Delirium. So Deranged Assistant's really cool card. 1/1 for 2. You can tap it and mill 1 to add 1 colorless. So again, the deck is evenly distributed, so the chances are you're going to be hitting different cards every time you mill yourself too. And Dreamscape Artist is just a powerhouse in most decks, but particularly good in this deck because you get to discard a card and sacrifice a land. So that's potentially 2 different card types immediately. And you're ramping yourself up too. Basically, this is a repeatable Harrow effect, but it's all putting so many cards in your grave, so it's just great for this deck. So going from there, the other main way that I get Delirium as quickly as possible is with card draw. But not just card draw, particularly looting effects, things that are like draw a card and then discard a card, or permanents that sacrifice to draw cards, because those are even better. Those get you creatures in the grave, artifacts in the grave, all kinds of things. So you can see I have a pretty thick stack here. This is all card draw, just different kinds of card draw. And particularly good with another small mill plan that I have, which is Jace's Erasure. This is a really fun card. Always been a big fan of it. Whenever you draw a card, target player mills the card. So every time I draw a card, I just also get to mill somebody for one. So when I'm just filtering through my deck with all these card draw spells, I'm also getting a little more mill value. So really nice. So let's kind of power through all this card draw. First off, like I said, I play a lot of permanents that sacrifice to draw cards. Great starter here, Conjurer's Bauble. It's basically just a really cheap cantrip that puts an artifact in my grave. Great card. Every once in a while, I'll put something back from my grave as well. So I can maybe tutor for it later with like a Merchant Scroll or something. But mainly just in there to put an artifact in the grave and draw a card for very cheap. Speaking of which, I have two other artifacts that also sack to draw. Courier's Capsule and Implement. Very similar cards. I like the Courier's Capsule a little more because the mana costs are a little more evenly distributed. You can play it on turn 2, sack it on turn 3. Versus Implement, you kind of have to play it on turn 3, sack it on turn 4, but you'll have more mana to work with on that turn, so it's nice. But they both just draw you 2 cards and put an artifact in your grave, so very nice. Then I have one creature that sacks itself to draw a card, but it's even better because it sacks itself, and then I draw a card and discard a card, so it loots. So this puts 2 cards in my grave immediately, and that could be, it's always going to be a creature, but it could also be, a land, instant, something else I don't have in there yet, closer to Delirium. Vessel of Paramnesia, another sacrificable permanent that draws a card. But this is, if I get a little lucky, this will just give me Delirium. I mean, you pay a blue, you sack it, target player mills 3. That can target someone else, or it can just target you. You mill 3, and then you draw a card. So this is instantly an enchantment in my grave, which is one of the lower counts in the deck. But also, I can mill myself for 3, and it just replaces itself anyways, draw a card. So really good way to push for Delirium. Then I have 2 more permanents that sack to draw, both enchantments, which is really nice. Like I said, enchantments are a little lower in the deck, so it's nice to have these. Fond of Fortunes is basically Courier's Capsule, but an enchantment. And Ire Ruin takes a little bit of lands coming into play, but then it sacks to draw 2 cards. I have a lot of fetch lands in this deck because, fetch lands put lands in your grave, so another great way to get Delirium. So this goes off pretty quickly, which is nice. And then one more non-instant, non-sorcery card draw effect. I do play 1 Looter, Thought Courier, draw a card, discard a card. These effects are great. I mean, I when he's out, I'll activate him every turn. I mean, this deck loves to just churn through and find all your protection spells and things like that. And also just, of course, get Delirium. So I think the rest of this pile, yeah, this is all instants and sorceries. So just going to kind of power through them here. We got Thought Scour. Of course, kind of like Vessel of Paramnesia. Cycles itself, and you can mill yourself for 2, or you can mill someone else if you want to. But great tool for Delirium. I do play Ponder and Preordain. This deck kind of wants to really get going early. If I can get Delirium on like turn 3, turn 4, and have Manic Scribe out, that's really ideal because, the more turns he's out, the better. And the more likely you'll maybe actually mill everyone out, which I have done. This deck has succeeded actually a handful of times. It's won 2 or 3 games, I think. And, like I said, the only way it can win is mill. So, I mean, it has the potential. It's not the best, but it's a lot of fun when you get going. But yeah, that's why I play these in here, just because, like, I really want to find, like, a Tolarian Winds or something really early and just play it, get that Delirium going, cast Manic Scribe. So these are nice. Oh, another 1 mana card draw spell. Which is really nice. Draw 2, discard 2, Careful Study. Again, Delirium, super simple. Ideas Unbound is a pretty wacky card. I think some like Pauper combo decks play this, or used to play this at least back in the day. But draw 3, discard 3 at end of turn. Very interesting card. And again, unfortunately, Arcane doesn't count as a card type. But again, this just 3 cards from my hand, that could easily be 3 different card types along with sorcery. Whoopsie, bumped my old rack here. But yeah, just powers through to Delirium so quickly. A couple of weirder ones: Strategic Planning, Tragic Lesson. These are both Actually, TCGPlayer is a reprint, but Tragic Lesson is new. Draw 2, discard unless you return a land. Usually I'm happy to discard in this deck, but I do like that this is an instant. And strategic planning as well. You look at the top 3, you get one of them, the rest go to the grave. Just more ways to get those cards in the grave. Compulsive Research I really love in this deck because you kind of want to discard a land for it, and sometimes that's the harder thing to get in the grave is a land, so this is a great way to do it. But also, if you just want Delirium, you can discard 2 cards. Sometimes this deck just wants to discard some cards, get Delirium going, so really nice. So, Frantic Search is another great one. Unfortunately, I don't like that it costs 3, but this is just Careful Study for free, even cheaper than Careful Study, but you gotta wait till turn 3 typically. But nice little card. Sift. I really love Sift. This should actually be Ray of Revelation from Modern Horizons. I gotta swap that out, but it's hard to keep track of 126 decks here, so we do our best. But Sift, draw 3, discard a card. I mean, that'll really find what you need for getting Delirium and also protecting yourself. So really, really good digging. Ray of Revelation's the same thing, but it's an instant. And there's actually an argument that I should have Sift in here because I need more sorceries than instants. I have plenty of instants in the deck, so that's one thing about it. And then lastly here, last but not least, Piece of the Puzzle is incredible. Deck is pretty heavy on the instants and sorceries, but let's see, reveal the top 5, get 2 instants and sorceries, and the rest go to the grave. So you're putting at least 3 cards in the grave when you cast this, and a sorcery. So, I mean, super quick Deliriums with this card. It's a little unfortunate, it costs 3, but still. So that's the instant and sorcery card draw, and I do have to talk about the elephant in the room here. I got the Stinky Fish and the Stinky Study. We aren't big fans of these cards, but they are necessary evil. I feel better about them when they're in decks like this that just need all the help they can get and are just trying to do something silly and ridiculous. But yeah, Heuristic Study, I mean, people play this in real EDH. It's ridiculous. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, they got to pay 1 or else you get to draw a card. That's ridiculous. Mystic Remora, almost as ridiculous. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, they have to pay 4. Who the hell is paying 4? But if they don't, you draw a card. Does have cumulative upkeep, gets stinkier and stinkier the longer you leave this fish out. So don't dawdle. Use it and lose it. So that, I think, comes to the end of the hard card draw spells. Now, while we're on the subject of filtering through the deck, there are a handful of tutors for the deck. So starting off with Merchant Scroll, great card, just gets me what I need. There's a lot of different instances in the deck that I want, particularly Ghostly Flicker and Displace. I will get into it. There is Flicker combo in this deck, but it's for a good cause. It's for mill, so I don't feel too bad. But yeah, I mean, you saw how many instances are in this deck already, and there's so many more to go over. So always relevant. There's 2 transmutes in the deck, the 2 blue transmutes, Muddle and Drift. Muddle does get Jace's Erasure, which is great. Drift gets a handful of cool cards, Fade Away and Uncomfortable Chill. I'll go over those in a bit. But also it gets Trinket Mage, which in turn gets Ghoul Collar Spell, which is another one of my little extra mill strategies I got. So Trinket Mage gets any artifact that costs 1 or less. Ghoul Collars is the typical target. Sometimes it's Relic, sometimes it's one of the artifact lands, but typically if I can, I want to get Ghoul Collars with it. Tap it each turn, each player mills 1. So turns Manic Scribe's mill 3 into mill 4 essentially. I mean, when you think about it, you get this out, you get Manic Scribe going. That's like 5 cards out of the deck a turn with their, draw for turn. Maybe Monarchs going around, that's maybe 6 cards. I mean, it adds up. 100 cards or 99 cards. It sounds like a lot, but you can really power through it if you get a nice draw with this deck and really get going. So, but yeah, Drift Phantasms can get Trinket Mage, which can get Ghoul Collar Spell. Drift Phantasms can also just get Heuristic Study if you just want to, be good and actually do the right thing, but that's not what we're about here. That's just not what we're about. And one last tutor, kind of a funky tutor, gets any wizard. There's a lot of wizards in this deck, like Trinket Mage. Once again, gets Trinket Mage. Also gets, your Thought Courier. It gets Vidalcan, what's his face? Vidalcan Dismisser, great card. I'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, once again, just get you what you need. Singleton formats, if there are tutors available, you play them. I mean, that's kind of how it is. So, step 2 is protection. I need to stay alive because the way this deck kind of goes, you play it early, people are milling, and they're like, who the hell cares? I have 60 cards left on my deck. Like, really doesn't matter. But once they get around 20 cards, 30 cards left, then they're like, oh geez, it's probably time to actually deal with this person and get rid of it. So you really do need a lot of defense. Because like I said, there's no attacking, there's no alternative win strategy here. It's just turtle up and wait. That is all I'm trying to do. So protection. There's a handful of ways that I protect myself. Starting off with one of the better ways is effects that top deck things. Really great in this deck because they're going to mill in their upkeep, so it's basically hard removal. The Delirium Mister, as I mentioned earlier, is a wizard. But when it enters the battlefield, you get to put a creature on top of its owner's library. So ideally you have Manic Scribe out, and they're going to just mill it away. So great card in general, but particularly good in here. And then I do play a handful of these top deck of creature effects. I chose to play the instant speed ones because you kind of want to do it when they attack you or when they're threatening you. Because the thing about multiplayer is if your opponent has a creature and it's not attacking you, it's kind of like you have that creature, you know? I mean, they're doing damage to players that aren't you, so why get rid of them, right? That's kind of my philosophy in a lot of situations, especially in this deck where, you know, I just want to mill people and keep people away from me. So I'd rather people quarrel amongst themselves. So Griptide is just straight up top deck creature. These ones, they have to be specifically attacking you. Whisk Away is attacking or blocking, which is pretty neat. But Sweep Away can always just bounce a creature, but if it's attacking, you can top deck. So all good effects. I always want to run more of these, but it's just so hard to cut, and I always want to kind of keep my ratios good for Delirium, so I always have trouble getting more of these in there, because I really want to just play the instant ones. The sorceries just don't feel good. So I stick to the instants. And one last top decker, Memory Lapse, becomes a hard counterspell if, granted, I get to mill the card, but you know, really nice in this deck. So top decking effects are great. I also have a lot of bouncing effects. Particularly, I like the ones that just sit on the field. So starting off with Seal of Removal and Aether Spellbomb, both great cards in there. Because once again, going back to Delirium, these put enchantments and artifacts in my grave, which is great. Aether Spellbomb in a pinch can just draw me a card. Spellbombs are really awesome. But, you know, as I've said before, having your removal public knowledge in multiplayer has its own benefits. You know, people know you're just going to bounce their creature if you attack them, if they attack you. So, you know, just having it there means, oh, I'll just attack someone else, I guess. And, you know, you can get aggressive with this if you just want to get Delirium and just bounce something. You can even bounce Manic Scribe, because remember, Manic Scribe doesn't just mill with Delirium. It also mills when you play it. So bouncing it isn't the worst thing, just replaying it, mill 3 more. But these are awesome. And one of the best ones in here, though, Neurotic Replica. It sacks 2 bounce, just like the other ones do, but it's also a 1/4, which is, you know, pretty beefy. As we've said many times, 4-bots are unkillable in this format. And another little benefit, it's an artifact and a creature. So this is 2 card types. So if you sack this, you get 2 different card types in your grave immediately. Just great stuff. And a few more bounce spells. These are all, you know, well, first off, Capsize. This is not a pet card of mine. This is just a good card. Very good card. Really can close out some games with this, just bouncing things to hold people off until they just mill out eventually. Buyback is just silly. It's fun stuff. But 2 more pet cards. Curfew, Winds of Rebuke, I love them both. Curfew, I mean, it's the blue Innocent Blood, right? I mean, each player has to bounce something. Gets around Shroud on those pesky commander damage decks that only have 1 creature out. Stuff like that. And Winds of Rebuke also mills. It mills 2 cards. So, you know, working towards that mill game plan. And, you know, and also just bounce a problem card, whatever you want. So bounce spells are just another way, because really you don't have to kill things. You just have to stick around, right? You just got to keep them from killing you too quickly. So more protection. We have a bit of more, I dare say, hard removal in this deck. So these are the colorless staples for removal here. We got Scour and Universal Solvent, very similar cards. I like Scour a little more because it's an instant from the hand and you get to exile something. But Solvent's nice too. It's nice, once again, you know, showing off your removal can have its own benefits. But yeah, Destroy Target Permanent does cost 7. It's a little bit much, but you know, you got to pay a high price to literally remove any permanent in blue, you know. So nice cards. And then Icy Prison. This is a really weird old card. So this is essentially Journey to Nowhere, but for 2 blue. So when it comes into play, you exile a creature, and when it leaves play, you return to play, just like Journey to Nowhere. But the thing about Icy Prison is, in your upkeep, you have to pay 3 colorless mana, or else this gets sacked. But it's even weirder than that. Any player may pay 3 to prevent this. So if you have something in mind, and you can convince somebody else who just doesn't want the creature you exiled to come back to pay 3, that's totally viable, and it could totally happen. And I think it's happened before. Not too often, though. Most times you got to pay up. But it's actually cool that you have an option to get rid of it, because once again, Delirium, you might want an enchantment in your grave, get it back going. So, you know, some legit removal in blue, which is pretty rare. And then we have some more just protection in general, starting off with protection for Manic Scribe. This is an instant speed enchantment that gives him Shroud. So, you know, people try to murder it or whatever, just slap this on there. And it actually is only instant. Well, it has the downside that if you play it as an instant, you have to sacrifice it in a turn. But you know what I'm going to say. Delirium, you're putting enchantment in your grave. That's a great way to do it. There's actually an exact copy of this card that just has flash, and it doesn't sack it in a turn. But I'm playing this purposely because I want to put enchantments in my grave. So I stuck to Mystic Veil over, I think it's called Alexi's Cloak. And then lastly, blue has a handful of fog-like effects. They're not true fogs, but it's basically all creatures get minus a certain amount of power until end of turn. Downsize is cool. You know, you overload it. All creatures get -4, which is quite a bit, -4. But Uncomfortable Chill, I'm actually a humongous fan of in PDH. I really love this card. All creatures get -2, -0, not as much, but draw a card really, I think, legitimizes it in this format. You know, it just cantrips and works as a pseudo fog. I mean, stops a pretty, you know, stops like a go wide combat step, and just replacing itself. It just makes it so versatile, I'd say. I've really worked wonders with this card, especially once you get Flicker combo going or something. You can get it back, fog every turn. I mean, and draw. So you know, it's just surprisingly effective. I'd say definitely try that card out. So I've said Flicker combo enough times. I think I should just show it off. I am running the full Monty here. Archaeomancer, Scrivener, Mnemonic Wall. I mean, there's just so many instant sorceries I want to get back, and I want to recast. So I run them all. You know, I just think it's kind of a necessary evil in this deck. And I do have the Flickers, Ghostly Flicker, and Displace. So, I mean, I guess if you've never seen these cards, very, very common strategy in PDH. You got Archaeomancer is a 1/2. When it comes into play, you return instant or sorcery. Scrivener is 2/2. When it comes into play, you return instant, doesn't get sorceries. And Mnemonic Wall, instant or sorcery when it comes into play. And then you got your Flicker effects. Ghostly Flicker and Displace. This one, exile 2 target artifact creatures or lands you control, and then return them back to play. And Displace only does creatures, but same thing. So the idea is you flicker these bad boys, you get Flicker back, and another creature enter the battlefield effect. So one thing, simple thing I can do, say I got like a Mnemonic Wall and I got just Manic Scribe out. I can flicker Mnemonic Wall and Manic Scribe. Manic Scribe comes back into play, everybody mills 3, and I just get Flicker back. And then basically I can just pay 3 to mill people 3. So I can kind of close games out that way. Now, I am not disgusting enough to run Peregrine Drake in this deck, though I would say if you're one of those competitive types and you want to get all serious, then I would recommend putting Peregrine Drake in this deck, because then you could just turn it into mill combo and pretty easy wins that way. But I like to get my victories the old-fashioned way, by milling everybody for 3 every single turn until they just give up. So that's what I'm going for. So let's see. Not too much left in this deck. A few mana rocks, just, you know, every deck kind of needs it in this format. You got Wayfarer's Bauble, you're going to find this in every deck. Commander Spear, once again, every deck. Pristine Talisman, particularly good in this deck because, like I said, we're just trying to stay alive, and blue does not gain life. So having a little bit of life gain never hurt. We also got Mind Stone, another great, you know, just mana rock, sack it, draw a card. And I'll say it again, all 3 of these, put an artifact in your grave. So good stuff. And then, of course, the tried and true Tormod's Crypt, Relic of Progenitus. Extra important in this deck because you are filling up that grave for people. So if you got maybe a Molder Hulk, Nyx Weaver, Ariok Salvagers, those kinds of decks, they kind of like you milling them. So you kind of want to punish them a bit. Trinket Mage can also get these bad boys, so just an auto include in most decks, I would say. Except Black. Black can get away with maybe no Tormods. So that's it for non-lands. Now the lands are actually a little interesting. I do have some cool stuff going on in here. Because, you know, once again, Delirium, that's the goal. So if we can put some lands in our grave, maybe, that would be splendid. So one great way to do that is the good old fetch lands. There are a handful of fetch lands in PDH. Starting off with Tamarisk Expanse, Involving Wilds, most straightforward ones. Tap them, sack them, get a basic land, put it in play tapped. Go get your island, get a land in your grave, good stuff. These I really like in this deck because, like I said, I'm trying to do things early. So I don't really want tap lands if I can help them. And these tap for colorless, which I can kind of deal with if I just have another island in my hand or something. Oh yeah, I do need Scare Tiller in this deck. Oh god, you know, it's so hard to keep track of all these decks, but Scare Tiller is definitely an improvement that is possible for this deck. Anyways, panoramas are great. They tap for colorless always, but also you can pay one tap, sack them, go get it. These are the three that get islands, so I can go get an island with them and put a land in my grave again. So good stuff. Fetches are great for this. I also have all the cycle lands. These all just have a way to discard them, draw a card. So once again, land in the grave and draw a card, so replaces itself as well. Very nice. I also played the two artifact lands, Darksteel Citadel, Seat of the Synod, because in the grave, these are two different lands or card types, artifacts and land. So always nice. Once again, Trinket Mage gets these, which in a pinch can be useful. And I have a few more lands. Oh, you know what? I missed a fetch land. This is the worst one by far, but I'm really committed to this fetch plan. I think it's totally worth it. But you have to pay 2 and tap and sack it to get a land, and it comes untapped. Just like the panoramas, but one more. But then, yeah, I have a couple of lands that sack themselves to do different things. Quicksand's a really nice one. You can blank an attacker. You know, -1, -2, that kills a lot of things. Fairly Curse makes a nice little blocker for me, and Haunted Fengraf can get back, you know, if Archaeomancer dies, or maybe I want to get back my Nurok Replica or one of these other weird little creatures I run. Always a nice little card, and really not much of a downside, especially in a monocolor deck, to run a few colorless lands, no big deal. And then I run the infamous Pete land, as we call them here in the studio. Comes in with 2, I wish it was 4, 2 depletion counters on it. You can tap them and remove a counter to add 2 of a certain mana. This one's blue, of course. Add 2 blue mana. And that's really nice early because, like I said, I'm trying to do a lot of things in the first 2 or 3 turns to get Manic Scribe out and get Delirium. So always welcome. And you know what? If it dies when I cast Manic Scribe, that's a land in the grave. Always nice. And one last non-basic land, Halimar Depths. It's just a nice card. Honestly, I've considered cutting this before, but since I also have some self-mill, I can kind of line things up so that I mill the cards I'm arranging on the top, so not too bad. But yeah, look at the top 3, arrange them as you choose, and also just taps for blue. And out of that, we just got a bunch of islands. But yeah, so that's the deck. It's really something. I'm a big fan of mill. I have a real soft spot for it. And you know, when I normally see mill in this format, it's like a combo mill. You know, it's like everybody's milled at once and the game ends, and that's just not fun to me. I want to feel the grind. You know, I want to feel like I'm working for that mill, and like I really got to just like see every little card go to the grave and just get him down real slow. That's probably why I'm so manic of a person, right? Well, I hope you enjoyed. Wonderful deck tech. And I hope you try some milling for yourself sometime soon. Because let me tell you, there's nothing more rewarding than a nice mill victory in PDH. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.